Rumors have a way of traveling faster than the truth, and over the past few days, the name of Pastor Creflo has been at the center of growing concern. Whispers began spreading online, with people questioning his well-being and asking whether he was in serious condition. For many, this news came as a complete shock. Pastor Dollar has always been seen as a figure of strength and stability, someone who carried the weight of leadership with confidence. Hearing that his health might be at risk immediately created a wave of worry, not only within his church community, but also among countless people who have followed his teachings for years. In moments like these, the world quickly divides between speculation and reality. Social media posts filled with questions like, "Is he okay?" and "What really happened to Pastor Dollar?" flooded timelines, leaving people searching for answers. Supporters, followers, and even critics found themselves united in curiosity and concern. The silence from the family during these first few hours only added to the tension, making many wonder if something very serious was truly happening behind closed doors. This silence was eventually broken when his wife decided to step forward, and her words became the center of the story. But before her statement came, the cloud of uncertainty hung heavy over everyone connected to Pastor Dollar, leaving people holding on to nothing but questions and prayers. To truly understand why these rumors shook so many people, one has to look at the life and influence of Pastor Creflo Dollar. For decades, he has been a household name in the world of ministry, known for his powerful sermons, his ability to connect with people, and his unshakable faith in God's promises. He built one of the most well-known ministries in America, guiding thousands inside the church walls and reaching millions more across television and online platforms. For his followers, Pastor Dollar has always been more than just a preacher. He has been a mentor, a teacher, and a father figure. His words have carried people through some of their darkest moments, giving them strength when they felt weak and reminding them of hope when everything around them seemed hopeless. Families have testified about how his teachings changed their lives. Marriages have been restored through his counseling, and countless individuals found a renewed sense of purpose because of his message. That is why the thought of him being in poor health felt deeply personal to so many. It wasn't just about a man facing a health challenge. It was about a spiritual leader whose presence had become a source of comfort and guidance for people across the world. For those who had watched him preach with so much energy and passion, the idea that he could now be struggling physically felt almost impossible to accept. Yet, as the whispers of concern grew louder, people realized that even leaders who carry the weight of thousands on their shoulders are still human. The uncertainty began quietly, almost like a spark that turned into a wildfire. A few unconfirmed posts on social media hinted that Pastor Creflo Dollar had been rushed to the hospital. At first, many brushed it off as just another baseless rumor, but soon the whispers grew louder. Different versions of the story began spreading. Some claimed he had collapsed during a private meeting, while others suggested that he had been battling health issues for weeks without telling anyone. The lack of clear information made the situation even more confusing. After days of unanswered questions and swirling rumors, the family finally decided to share the truth about Pastor Creflo Dollar's health. His wife, with calm determination, explained that while the situation was serious, it was not as life-threatening as many feared. The truth was that Pastor Dollar had been dealing with extreme exhaustion and complications that came from years of pushing his body beyond its limits. His demanding travel schedule, countless sermons, and the weight of responsibility had taken a toll on him. Doctors revealed that he had experienced a sudden health scare that required immediate attention. It wasn't something that could be ignored any longer. Though the condition was serious enough to raise concern, they reassured the family that with rest, medical care, and proper recovery time, he could regain his strength. This was not the end of his journey, but rather a moment to pause, reflect, and allow healing to take place. For many who had feared the worst, This news brought a sense of relief. The man who had preached tirelessly for years was not on the brink of death, but he was human, vulnerable, fragile, and in need of care just like anyone else. His wife admitted that this season had been a wake-up call for their family, reminding them of the importance of balance, health, and taking time to rest. Instead of panic, she asked for prayers of healing and strength. She reminded everyone that the same faith Pastor Dollar had taught for decades was now the very faith sustaining their family in this trial. It wasn't about denial of the challenges. It was about facing them with trust that God was still in control. Within hours, church members were receiving phone calls from friends and family, asking if the news was true. Some people insisted that it was nothing more than exhaustion, pointing to Pastor Dollar's busy travel and preaching schedule. Others, however, feared the worst, believing the situation was far more serious than anyone was admitting. The uncertainty created a wave of panic among his supporters, many of whom looked up to him not only as a pastor but also as a spiritual father who had guided their faith for years. What made matters more complicated was the silence from his family and the ministry team. For days, there was no official statement, no update, no confirmation or denial. This silence only fueled the fire of speculation. People wanted answers, and without them, imaginations began to fill in the blanks. The story spread so widely that even those who weren't closely following his ministry became curious about what was happening behind closed doors. It wasn't until his wife finally decided to break her silence that the rumors began to take shape into something more real, and her words became the moment everyone had been waiting for. When the silence finally broke, it came through the voice of the person closest to him, his wife. For days, people had been waiting, refreshing their screens, and hoping to hear something that could calm their fears. And when she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of both love and honesty. She didn't stand before the cameras with a polished speech. Instead, she spoke from the heart, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She began by acknowledging the pain and confusion the rumors had caused. She admitted that the past few days had been some of the hardest their family had ever faced. Watching her husband struggle, even for a short while, was something she never imagined she would have to endure. Her words painted a picture of sleepless nights, constant prayers, and moments of quiet strength that only a wife and mother could understand. Yet in the midst of that vulnerability, there was also a strong sense of hope. She reassured the public that while her husband had indeed been facing health challenges, the situation was not as hopeless as many feared. She explained that the family was standing together, supporting him, and trusting God for complete healing. At one point, her voice cracked as she described how much Pastor Dollar meant to their children and how deeply the family needed him to keep fighting. She also took the opportunity to speak directly to the community. With a calm but firm tone, she asked people to stop spreading unverified claims and to instead turn their words into prayers. She reminded everyone that their family, just like anyone else's, deserved compassion, privacy, and patience. And as she spoke, it became clear that this was not just about correcting rumors. It was about showing the world what it means to walk through a storm with faith and dignity. After his wife's heartfelt statement, something remarkable began to happen. The family, once surrounded by silence and uncertainty, was now surrounded by love and unity. His children, who had quietly been standing by his side, were now seen as pillars of strength for both their father and mother. They shared small messages of encouragement, reminding people that while the situation was difficult, their faith in God was unshaken. The church community also rose to the moment. Almost overnight, prayer gatherings were organized across different states. Members filled the sanctuary, some with tears in their eyes, others holding hands, all united by one purpose: to lift their pastor up in prayer. Even those who could not physically be present joined online, creating a wave of spiritual support that stretched across the world. For many, it was a reminder of how deeply Pastor Dollar's ministry had touched their lives. Close friends and fellow pastors also reached out, some visiting the family to offer comfort, while others publicly asked their own congregations to join in prayer. The air of fear that had once surrounded the rumors slowly began to shift into an atmosphere of hope. Instead of focusing on what might go wrong, people began to focus on what God could do in the middle of this trial. His wife described those days as both exhausting and uplifting. Exhausting because of the emotional weight, but uplifting because of the outpouring of love that reminded her she wasn't walking this path alone. What could have been a time of isolation instead became a moment of unity, where family, friends, and an entire church stood together, believing for his recovery.